Welcome. Our sign language interpreter this evening is Meresha Awiti. Now, for the first time in Kenyan history, police will be provided with armored vehicles. President Uhuru Kenyatta says the armored personnel carriers will help police effectively fight terrorism and other organized crime without depending on the military. The president also revealed that the government would acquire 3 new police helicopters by June. Patrick Amimo has those details.
The military is the only discipline service unit that has been having the exclusive use of armored personnel carriers during security operations within and outside the Kenyan borders. But the security challenges related to terrorism and cattle rustling are making the government change tact on the provision of protective gear to security agencies operating in volatile areas, especially the police.
I'm also happy to announce that for the first time in the history of this country, the National Police Service will be provided with armored personnel carriers, APCs, as well as a number of MRAPs. And I consider this a very important milestone because it will go a long way in securing our frontier areas and also enable you not necessarily to depend on the military, but to have your own capacity to do your job with.
The government is also keen to modernize the police air wing to improve air support capacity and quick crime prevention. The police wing is based at Wilson Airport and operates a fleet of helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. However, the Russian-built helicopters have been grounded for some time.
As of today, 2 of the Mi-17 helicopters, troop carriers, which have been laying uko kwa nyasi, have been taken for complete overhaul, while a new helicopter has been procured and will be arriving in the country in the next few weeks. I anticipate also that by June of this year, we shall have had another 2 new helicopters, therefore bringing our police wing up to speed.
The president saluted the police for reducing cases of banditry and livestock theft in North Rift, but Uhuru wants the police to deal firmly with the vice across the country.
To encourage you to step up your efforts in other areas such as the border of Meru and Isiolo counties, as well as in other parts of Samburu County that still face sporadic cattle theft.
We will continue working on our own and with other security agencies and with other government departments and the people of this country to combat principally the threat of terrorism, the threat of banditry and cattle rustling, and to focus on people who make intemperate statements aimed at causing intercommunal tensions and unnecessary conflict.
The president declared continued corruption in the police service and urged top officers to weed out the corrupt.
Juzi nilikuwa Mombasa, jameni, mtu amesimamisha gari katikati, hata sio hiyo, akichukua pesa kutoka abiria. Sasa jameni, wale ambao wote including myself ambao tulikuwa nyuma na unaona mtu akiokota pesa, unafikiria mtu atafikiria namna gani? Tuambiane ukweli. We cannot have this, and you must agree. Even yourselves as command, we must set the right example.
The president made the remarks when he presided over the closing of a meeting between the Inspector General of Police and all regional and county police commanders at the Directorate of Criminal Investigation Training School in Nairobi. Patrick Amimo, KTN News.
CORD leader Raila Odinga has reacted to the directive by the Director of Public Prosecutions for the re-examination of the report issued to him over the Eurobond saga. Raila claims the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is in a rush to clear those mentioned over the matter, and Tobiko's directive proves that the matter cannot be swept under the carpet.
The letter dated 22nd January 2016 directing the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission to clarify on some, quote, crucial areas of its report over the Eurobond saga today received several reactions from across the political divide. Former Prime Minister and leader of the opposition Raila Odinga, while speaking in Vihiga, expressing confidence that the directive will enhance complete investigations that will vindicate his incessant statement that billions of shillings indeed have been lost in the 250 billion shilling Eurobond cash.
Juzi bwana Tobiko alisema hii maneno imekwisha, amefunga file. Jana anasema kuna bado kuna dosari, kuna taswishi hapa na pale. Kwa hivyo mwezi siku yake ni ngapi? Siku ya 40 imefika.
The Director of Public Prosecution, Keriako Tobiko, has returned the file to the EACC to reinvestigate certain factors of the Eurobond scam, noting that there are some aspects of the report which require clarification from the anti-graft body. Raila says the earlier move by the DPP to summon investigating officers from the EACC and from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations to give the answers may have been served up as a decoy to pull attention away from the real culprits. But a section of leaders think otherwise.
Tunataka kumuuliza Mheshimiwa Raila Odinga awache kuwadaa wa Kenya. Tunataka tuseme kama sisi wabunge hakuna pesa yote imepotea katika Kenya Eurobond.
The court leader's sentiment that the matter can no longer be swept under the carpet, however, received support from some Jubilee leaders.
If you are seeing money being stolen and you want to whistleblow, like the way Raila did for Waiguru, I will support you. Because if you are saying money is being stolen, this is public money. The money we have is not for the opposition, and it is not for the ruling coalition only. It is for Kenyans.
The EACC now has 14 days to provide the required information to the office of the DPP before Keriako Tobiko can decide either to close the case or pursue it further. Timothy Otieno, KTN News.
Residents of Nyanya village in Mwingi Central, Kitui County have held a feast to celebrate the arrest of an alleged serial killer accused of murdering 12 people. The suspect, arrested just over a week ago, is set to face trial next week. And here's Trix Ngado with those details.
At a glance, you might mistake this gathering at Nyanya village, Mwingi Central, for wedding or church gathering. Well, the celebratory tunes being belted out here are a sign of joy over the capture of an alleged serial killer who once had locals sleepless for days.
Kama mwadhiriwa, ni nasema napongeza serikali yetu ikiwa hakika huyo mtu ako mkononi mwa serikali.
Mimi naona ni kama Mungu aliniokoa. Kwa sababu kama ningeamuka usiku nisikie kelele kule kwa ndugu yangu, hata mimi singewajua.
Kilonzo Musyoka, or Karunyu as he is known around here, is said to have murdered 15 people in one day back in July 2013. The murders that caused locals to live in fear, not knowing when he would strike next, spiraled into retaliatory attacks that saw the lynching of 2 people suspected to be working in cahoots with him. His mother and wife also suffered the wrath of locals. The 2 were locked in a granary and burnt alive. The bloodbath that followed in Karunyu's wake, an understandable justification for today's celebration. Area MP Joy Matambu is now asking local authorities not to release the man, with other leaders thanking villagers for diligently helping in tracing Karunyu.
Wingi niliwaona nyinyi wengi wenu kwa TV, nikasema kumbe kulikuwa na watu wameishi kwa kichaka wengi.
Mimi najua kunaweza kuwa na ukora. Ati Karunyu hakuna ushahidi. Ati Karunyu sijui watu waenda. Huyo mtu alitekeleza mahafa ya watu 18 hapa. Hakuna ushahidi mwingine unatakikana.
They warned the police against releasing Karunyu back into society without proper justice being meted out. Trix Ngado, KTN News, Nairobi.
Now, what are your worst memories of high school? Were you among those that did not take to some of the science lessons? Now, imagine yourself sitting in a classroom where these subjects are taught, not on a blackboard, but a special touchscreen board that gives visual representations of these subjects, where even a Bunsen banner blazes away on the screen. Does it sound more interesting now? Well, rather than let you imagine, my colleague Sharon Momanyi is going to show you how a new school in Nairobi is revolutionizing education with smart learning technology.
Standing tall in the heart of Mogoya Estate in Nairobi, the just opened Nairobi Leadership Academy would appear like any other ordinary school.
Good morning. Good morning.
Get into the classroom, and ordinary is left at the door. Welcome to Smart Learning. In front of the classroom, where you would ordinarily find a black or white board, a big screen is placed. This is a smart board. Teacher Faisal is taking a group of staff through the technology that will be used for learning in the school.
This is a tool for the teachers, not to replace the teachers.
The device is a touch screen that allows the operator to manipulate content with the touch of a finger. There are applications for different subjects, including maths, physics, chemistry, among many other subjects. The spectacular demonstrations are a benefit to the learning process, as it is an interactive process that keeps the students interested. Further, the method meets the different learning needs of students, from those that prefer visual properties to audio, and those that like to learn practically.
We've got the students who are auditory students, and these students are students that would like to, look at, see if they're learning something, they need to see it, in a media form, like a video. You show them. So in an introduction of that lesson, as a teacher, I might want to show them a video of what they are learning. And this is how they would retain that information.
The instructor can save the screen recording such that the students can access the lessons later in video form. The screen also has a camera through which a teacher can see his or her students while writing on the board.
James, I can see you're not concentrating.
Nancy Mbugwa, a geography author and a former teacher at Alliance Boys and Kenya High Schools, is a school principal at this school, which, as its name suggests, will also focus on teaching leadership and entrepreneurial skills to high school girls.
Leadership and entrepreneurship curriculum will be ingrained into the 844. The things they learn, 844 by the way is a very rich curriculum, but the things they learn, they never get a chance to practice, to put them into real life experiences.
The school borrows its system from British and South African schools, particularly regarding leadership training. What caught our eyes, apart from the smart teaching boards, are the color codes of different classes that have matching seats and lockers.
Students will no longer be sleeping. They sleep a lot in class, especially when the teacher is slow a little. But here the teacher cannot afford to be slow. The teacher is also excited as well.
Admission of students is in progress, and learning here begins in about a week's time to bring together girls from all religions and backgrounds. The fees for each term would set every parent back a minimum of 120,000 shillings per term. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News.
Now to Kenya's Turkana County, which has been in the world headlines of late of archaeological finding that reveals evidence of a massacre of human relatives up to 10,000 years ago. KTN's Joanne Leting traced a group of researchers following up on these finds and at Naturuk, Turkana West, and here's that story from her.
Warfare or inter-group conflict is today associated with one group of people wanting the territory or resources or power held by another. Prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies were not active and therefore did not own land or have significant possessions. Many scholars have argued that warfare only emerged after active farming. However, the findings at Naturuk show that inter-group conflict has a much longer history.
A lot of the understanding of conflict has based around ideas that one needs to own land or things or power to be susceptible of being attacked. It was thought that people who lived lives that were not settled, were partly nomadic or largely or partly nomadic, we don't know the extent, and who didn't have a strict ownership of things. People thought that they didn't have warfare, that they didn't have conflict, because there was nothing to steal. So in Naturuk, we see that that is not true, that there was conflict in their lives as well.
So what could have led to the attack?
We tend to assume that what is worth stealing is the things that we appreciate. And I think that for hunter-gatherers, they obviously had things that were sufficiently valuable that somebody else wanted them. So I think that we have to change our views and step back and think from somebody else's perspective what is worth fighting for. And we shouldn't forget that again, this time, Lake Turkana was so rich, and probably the populations were quite large. So there was probably pressure about the amount of food and the places where you could go hunting and so on. And that was sufficient for conflict.
Of the 27 individuals discovered, 21 were adults, 8 males, 8 females, 5 unknown, and partial remains of 6 children. The first skull to be excavated is said to be 99% complete.
The first skeleton that we excavated at Nataruk was actually already diagnostic of what had happened at the site. So remember that I said that I noticed a piece of a skull, of bone that was still buried. And what I saw on the ground, just coming out of the ground, was the back of somebody's head. And that head was this one. And all that showed outside the ground was this part. So we excavated this skeleton, and indeed it turned out to be a man, again lying prone, face down into the lagoon sediment. And when we cleared it and took it out, we could see that actually it had extraordinary injuries in the head. So this man was hit on the front of the head, as you can see, and this injury actually squashed the skull and tilted it outwards. But then it was also hit on the side of the head, and this hit crushed the face, pushed it sideways, and eventually also broke his neck.
The remains of a 6 to 9 month old fetus were also recovered from within the abdominal cavity of one of the women.
One of the most poignant is the skeleton of a young woman. And we found her, she was sitting, not lying, and her hands were crossing between the legs and over the feet that were also crossed. So she was in a crouch position with the head tilted backwards. And when we finished the excavations, and we found little fragments of bone, and then we sieved all the bone that came from around her body. So what came from inside her belly, her abdomen, in there were the little bones of a baby.
Bones of wild animals and fishes were also discovered at the site.
So 10,000 years ago, this part of Africa was actually very wet. And Lake Turkana was much, much larger than it is now. So on the shores of that lake, we have found the remains of all types of East African animals. So we have found elephant and hippos and giraffe and buffaloes and rhinos and primates and lions and hyenas and crocodiles and all the others. So it was an extremely rich place.
The site was first discovered in 2012 by Pedro Ebea, a Turkana fossil hunter working with the In Africa project. Following careful excavations, the researchers used radiocarbon and other dating techniques on the skeletons, as well as on samples of shell and sediment surrounding the remains to place Nataruk in time. For KTN News in Nataruk, Turkana County, I am Joanne Letting.
To Burundi now, where the United Nations Security Council delegation declared there wasn't much progress made even after they met with Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza. U.S. Ambassador Samantha Power said they did not make much headway in the meeting, which brought together the head of state and a 15-member council, which arrived in Burundi's lakeside capital, Bujumbura, on Thursday. Trixie Ngada reports.
The delegation met with President Pierre Nkurunziza in Gitega for more than 2 hours. The meeting, a second of its kind in less than a year, came a day after rebels in the smallest East African state raised the stakes in the crisis by declaring a general who led a failed coup in May as their leader. This deepened concern that Burundi is sliding back into conflict after its ethnically charged civil war ended in 2005. Nkurunziza's re-election for a third term sparked the crisis, which has raised fear of an ethnic conflict in a region where memories of Rwanda's 1994 genocide remains fresh. The president has rejected the deployment of an African peacekeeping force, saying the troops would constitute an invading force. The issue is expected to be the focus of an African Union summit at the end of January.
We have told them that the government is following what the constitution says. Burundi has signed the international laws, which we follow.
I want to stress the Security Council has been in Burundi twice in the last 10 months. The only time in the history of UN Security Council missions that we have visited a country twice in such a short period of time was Burundi back in the 1993-1994 period. None of us want the situation in Burundi to deteriorate. We are here because we want to support efforts at dialogue, because we believe as a council that a more substantial international presence here can help.
The United Nations estimates the death toll at 439 people, but says it could be higher. More than 240,000 people have fled abroad. The rebel group Forebu announced on Thursday that it was now commanded by the former intelligence chief, General Godfrey Niobare. The group said it welcomed international mediation but also called for Burundians to support their fight against Nkurunziza. Burundi's government has accused neighboring Rwanda of supporting the rebel group by training and arming Burundian refugees recruited on Rwandan soil. Nkurunziza raised those accusations again on Friday with the Security Council, said diplomats who were in the closed-door meeting. Rwanda previously dismissed the allegations.
We have heard those stories and we have told these people, carry out investigations and find out who is gone where and how did they go there, and let us know.
Months of talks between the government and the opposition last year failed to make progress. Fresh negotiations began at the end of December in Uganda have already failed. Nkurunziza backed Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni's mediation efforts. Regional Western diplomats say the government has set too many conditions about who can attend talks to make them meaningful. Trix Ingado, KTN News, Nairobi.